Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mass Retirees Weekly Update. Today's Friday, December 6th. I'm Sean Duhamel. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining with us again this week. Now I've got two major news items to report to you this week, but before I do that, let me give you a reminder first and foremost for our members living in central Massachusetts that today at 11 a.m. will be our final area meeting of 2024. We will be back at the Auburn Elks, conveniently located right off the Mass Pike. The meeting will kick off at 11. We'll get done somewhere between 12:30, quarter of 1. We'll have a Q&A. We always have cash door prizes, and light refreshments are always served at our meetings. And you're always welcome to bring a guest. And our meetings are open to all Mass Retirees members. It gives you a great opportunity to meet directly with us. It gives us the opportunity to meet directly with you. And as I have said time and time again, and I know that Frank Valeri and our whole team here believes the same thing, this is one of the best parts of our job, is meeting directly with you and being able to talk to you, get to know you a little bit face to face. And if you have any personal questions or complaints or something you want to talk about, it's a great opportunity to do so. And we'll also be talking about some of the key things that are going on, whether it's the COLA Commission, healthcare here in Massachusetts, the refiling of our legislative package for the new session that starts next month, and of course the issues I'm going to talk about today in this video, whether it be the Social Security WEP and GPO or some breaking news in terms of the Wellpoint plan and what's happening out in the Springfield area. So again, today, 11 a.m., Auburn Elks, our final 2024 meeting. We will be kicking off the 2025 meeting schedule in mid-January in Tewksbury. That information is on page 3 of your newsletter. It's also contained in today's weekly email message that's going out to all of our members at 6 a.m. on Friday morning. So if you're not a Mass Retirees member, and you're not receiving the newsletter or going to our meetings or receiving our weekly email messages, please consider joining. If you're a retiree or if you're an active employee who's nearing retirement age, we have an associate member program for active employees. It is a great resource for all of you, and it also helps, it's just strength in numbers is what it comes down to at the end of the day. We exist solely for the purpose of advocating for, supporting, serving retired public employees from Massachusetts. That's it. That's our sole purpose, and it has been ever since 1968. So with that, let's jump into the news of the week. I know that everybody is chomping at the bit for updates on what's happening in Washington, D.C. with legislation to fully repeal the Social Security windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset. I think everyone knows by now that back in November 12th, the U.S. House of Representatives overwhelmingly voted for H.R. 82, which would fully repeal both of the federal laws that were created back in 1983. That legislation has now been in the U.S. Senate going on 4 weeks. We're about 3.5 weeks in. At this point in time, there has been no activity on the bill. There is no scheduled vote on the bill. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes talk. And I know that thousands of Mass Retirees members, just like thousands of public retirees from all across the country who are affected by WEP and GPO, have been very actively engaged in contacting your local U.S. Senator. And that's the most important piece of this, is that your local senators, and every state has 2, need to hear from you. So if you're here in Massachusetts, it is Elizabeth Warren and Ed Markey, both of whom are co-sponsors of Senate 597, which is the Senate version of H.R. 82. The 2 bills are identical, but we would prefer that H.R. 82 be the bill that's voted on, because if it passes the Senate in the same shape and form with no amendments, no changes to what the House did, the bill immediately goes to President Biden for his signature, and he is a supporter of full repeal of WEP and GPO, and we have every faith in the world that the president will sign this. If a different version of the bill goes through, particularly if it is amended, it then needs to go back to the House for the House to concur with those amendments. And if they disagree between the House and the Senate, the bill will be dead. Also, if the Senate does not act on a bill by December 20th, which is, as of now, is the date of the congressional adjournment for the year, meaning that they're done for the year on December 20th, the bill will be dead and it will need to be refiled for the new congressional session in 2025, and the whole process will start over again. The Republicans will remain in control of the House of Representatives by, I believe it's a 5-vote majority, so very, very close. In the Senate, the Republicans will take control of the Senate in January. They will have a 53-vote majority overall. And the path for full repeal at that point may become even more difficult. So now is the time. But as I started to say, we know that thousands of you who are watching this video right now have taken the initiative to contact your local senators, and that makes all the difference in the world. While you are free to contact folks from other states, the impact of contacting someone who's not your representative, is not your senator, you don't live in that state, you don't vote in that state, you don't pay taxes in that state, it does not have the same weight or impact as contacting someone whose job it is to represent you. There are 100 U.S. senators, 2 from every state. Their job is to represent the people from their state. And that's why it's so important that wherever you happen to be, contact your local senators. Also, if you have family or friends living in another state, ask them to reach out to their local U.S. senator. Contained in today's email message, which again comes out at 6 a.m. on Friday mornings, we kind of break down and run for a list of the key senators from a handful of states that collectively across the country we are trying to reach. And most of those senators are Republican, members of the Republican leadership, starting with Senator McConnell, who as of now is the Senate Minority Leader. In the past, Senator McConnell has staunchly opposed full repeal of WEP and GPO. That's been the largest roadblock to moving forward with full repeal legislation in previous congressional sessions, because even if the House had passed something years ago, it would have run up to the immovable roadblock that has been Senator McConnell for many years. And the Senate Republican leadership has relatively been in lockstep for that. However, during the current congressional session, Senator McConnell and his immediate leadership team really haven't taken a public position on these issues. Right up until today, we're not exactly sure where they stand. They haven't publicly commented or issued press releases for the most part. There are some senators, like Senator Cruz and Senator Cornyn from Texas, who have come out and said that they do not support full repeal of WEP and GPO. Senator Marco Rubio from Florida, same thing. He has been in communication with our members living in Florida, explaining that he does not support full repeal. He would prefer to see a reform of WEP and GPO rather than full repeal. So at least in those instances, we know where people stand. But whether it's Senator McConnell, Senator John Thune from South Dakota, who's the incoming Senate Majority Leader, Senator Chuck Grassley, and Senator Crapo from Idaho. Senator Crapo is critical to this issue. He is the incoming Republican chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. And in the U.S. Senate, it is the Finance Committee that has oversight over all issues related to Social Security. So within the Republican caucus in the Senate, a lot of the Republican senators are going to defer to Senator Crapo for some guidance in his opinion on the course of action or the direction they should take. But at the end of the day, it comes back to Senator Chuck Schumer, who is from New York. He is the Senate Majority Leader at this present time. He will become the Minority Leader in January. But it is up to Senator Schumer eventually to schedule, to put the bill on the calendar, schedule a vote, bring it to the floor, and have a vote. If nothing else, we believe that retirees deserve to have a vote on this issue. You deserve to know exactly where your U.S. Senator stands, just like you now know where your local congressman stands. You can't hide when the vote's going to be taking place. I'm not trying to suggest that people are trying to hide, but the chips need to fall where they may, and people need to say yes or no one way or the other instead of kicking the can down the road and stringing retirees on year after year after year. It is incredibly unfair, and we have come far too long over the last 41 years to finally get to this point that at the end of the day, a vote needs to take place, and that's what we are most heavily focused on. However, we do believe that Senator Schumer intends on bringing the bill to the floor, And he's doing so in a somewhat cautious manner, which is a little bit troubling given that now we only have 2 weeks left in the congressional session. There's only 2 weeks. The December 20th is 2 weeks from today. And if the 20th comes and goes and nothing happens, the bill's dead. So we are making every attempt, working with our colleagues here in Massachusetts, as well as retirees and organizations and unions all across the country. Everyone's pulling in the same direction to put the pressure on their local members, as well as the congressional leadership, to bring a bill to the floor to get this thing done. But it's going to be an uphill battle. And as we talk about in today's email message, and I mentioned in the Facebook post, we do have a growing number of organizations across the country who have come out in opposition to full repeal of WEP and GPO. And there are at least 7 Washington, D.C. based think tanks that are well known: the Heritage Foundation, the American Enterprise Institute. The list goes on, and we list those organizations in the emails. Everyone is hyperlinked to the public statements that they have put out relative to WEP and GPO and why they are opposed. But that's just created another very large hurdle that we need to overcome, because those organizations, even though we disagree with them and they are standing in the way of us achieving something on your behalf, they are taken seriously across the country. And they have a lot of clout. The Heritage Foundation, for instance, is very, very close to the Republican Party, and particularly close to the incoming Trump administration. So when they speak, people on the right tend to listen to them. Just like some of the organizations on the left, when they speak, Democratic and progressive politicians tend to listen to them, or at least take their opinions seriously. So it's something that we need to contend with. But at the end of the day, we are going to continue to do everything we possibly can to get a deal done. This week, our close friends and allies from the Texas Teachers Association, the Retired Teachers Association, Tim Lee, their executive director, has spent the week in Washington, D.C. He and I have been in daily contact, really multiple times a day, as he's traversed the halls of the U.S. Senate, knocking on any door he can come across, trying to do everything that they can, just like we've been doing everything we can here back in Massachusetts, to get this thing across the finish line. So with that, let me shift over to healthcare. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of positive news right now on the healthcare front either. Some of you may now be aware and have received information, if you're living in the Springfield area and you're insured through the GIC's Wellpoint plan, and if you seek your medical care or have been a patient at Baystate Health over the past year, you may have received notification from either Baystate, the city of Springfield, or Wellpoint that as of January 1st, Baystate Health will no longer accept Wellpoint non-Medicare patients. If you are enrolled in Medicare under Wellpoint, this does not apply to you. It's a completely separate situation, separate contract, but the non-Medicare Wellpoint plans as of now will no longer be accepted by Baystate Health as of January 1st. The reason behind this is quite simple. It's a contract dispute. From what we understand, Baystate Health several months ago came forward with the contract was up for renewal. They came forward with a very high price increase across the board for the hospital and doctor services that they provide through Baystate Health. And from what we understand, it was at least 3 times that of the core inflation rate. Wellpoint simply said, we can't afford, our members can't afford, the GIC and taxpayers cannot afford to continue to pay what they believe to be exorbitant price increases, and they drew a line in the sand. And after weeks, if not months, of negotiations, earlier this week, from what we understand, Baystate Health walked away from the table. They ended negotiations, and unfortunately, they are treating our members as pawns. That's our opinion. They are placing you in the middle and trying to use you as leverage to get Wellpoint, the GIC, or whomever to concede to their very large price increase demands. And that is incredibly unfair. We believe it's irresponsible. And we are encouraging Baystate and Wellpoint to come back to the table and negotiate a deal, figure this out, and get something done on behalf of their members and their patients. But to be clear, it was Baystate Health that walked away from the negotiations, not Wellpoint. And as you hopefully read or watched a video a couple of weeks ago about our deep concerns about healthcare affordability, the insurance companies, whether it's Wellpoint or Blue Cross or Harvard Pilgrim, Tufts, the MGB plan, none of them can continue to simply say yes and provide a blank check. And I'm not trying to insinuate that that's what's happened in the past. But year after year after year, as these healthcare costs continue to very quickly go up at an uncontrollable rate, only resulting in you having to pay more in monthly premiums or out-of-pocket costs and constantly being nickeled and dimed and stuck in the middle of all of this, something has to give. And it is very unfair and just simply not right to place retirees or anyone, any patient, in the middle of this. Something's going to be figured out, but the status quo simply cannot continue. You can't afford to continue to pay more. The government, the employers cannot afford to pay more. The taxpayers are not going to continue to agree to pay more. So something's got to give. And we don't know what the answer to that is. I wish I did. That would be wonderful, but we don't. But what I do know is going to take everyone coming together collectively to figure this out. And our association has made it very clear that we want to play a role in that. We want to help bring people together, help figure this out, protect our members' rights to high quality, affordable health care and choice. Those are the key elements of this. It does not do you any good to have the best health insurance plan in the world, but that you can't afford to access your care. And that's what we're seeing right now. More and more people are reporting that they cannot afford to go to the doctor, to get a test, to pick up their prescription, because they don't have the money. It's too expensive. And we live in one of the wealthiest, best states in the country, with the best health care in the world, and if 40% of our residents here in Massachusetts cannot afford to access their care, that's a crisis. And that's just, you can't justify that. That something's got to change. And I'm sorry for those of you who are patients at Baystate Health. It's very unfair to put you in the middle of this, and we're going to do, again, what we can to help figure this out. In the meantime, the GIC and Wellpoint are going to work with those members who are impacted to help you find either alternative care or waive requirements in terms of going out of network in some cases, to make sure that no one's going to go without the needed care that you have. So if you are involved, call Wellpoint. Call the GIC. If you need to, call us, either myself or Nancy McGovern. We'll help walk you through this. No one's going to go without insurance. And at the end of the day, this will be figured out. In the meantime, there's going to be some bumps in the road. And it's not just the Wellpoint Baystate Health disagreement over the contract. We're seeing this across the state. Here in Eastern Mass, there's been ongoing disputes between Point 32, which is the parent company for Harvard Pilgrim and Tufts, with a number of Boston area hospitals and Central Mass hospitals. Some of our members have received letters relative to that situation. And we envision this now being a trend, at least in the interim, when these insurance contracts are coming up and the insurance company is negotiating with the healthcare provider over price increases. Again, something has to give. Now, we get into full details in today's email message, so keep an eye on that. Two more quick points. You may recall a few weeks ago, we co-hosted here at Mass Retirees a webinar with our colleagues at EO Care. EO Care, of course, is a provider of medical marijuana products and care plans and information. The webinar was informational. It was hosted by the clinical team from EO Care, including Dr. Brooke Worcester, who's the medical director for EO. We had several Mass Retirees members participate in the webinar and ask some fantastic questions. The link for you to watch that video, which includes opening comments from myself and an introduction of the EO Care team, That link is included in today's email message to all of you. So if you're interested in the topic of medical marijuana, medical cannabis, you want to learn more, this is a great place to start, because I think a lot of your basic questions will be answered through watching the webinar. And finally, our January 2025 edition of The Voice. This was just dropped off at our office this afternoon. I'm recording this on Thursday evening. It should be in your mailbox over the coming week. Right on the front page, history is made. It's a full account of the vote that took place on November 12th in the House and how we got to that point and what we're hoping to achieve going forward. But just as important is the story on the bottom about the new actuarial valuations that have just been released relative to the state retirement system and the teachers' retirement system that contains some very, very good news. The financial and economic health of our retirement systems is excellent. There is no cause for concern, and this will really help to bolster our argument going into this new special COLA commission of how and why we believe that the COLA base, particularly for state and teacher retirees, is able to be increased at a more sustainable level, and that it's affordable going forward. And we get into the details of that in today's or the January edition of The Voice, so keep your eyes open for that. So those of you who are in Central Mass, come on by the Auburn Elks this morning at 11. It'd be great to see you in person. And for everyone else, we'll be back to you again next Friday with a fresh edition of our weekly update. Bye-bye, everybody.